Welcome back to another episode of Forging Better Humans podcast. I am your host, Ted Drever, and with us today is Haley Freeman, and she is a local administrator that we're going to get into. I'm going to describe Haley, or Haley's going to describe herself very much so here in the future. What I wanted to talk about was we have a really cool community here at Iron Legion of people that, we want to talk about and kind of show you guys the type of people that train here. The whole idea behind the Forging Better Humans podcast is, showing what type of people are attracted to our training styles and what our training styles can do for those types of people out there in the world, right? So there's a lot of pigeonholing going on, I think, in modern day society where, all cops are like this, all firefighters are like this, every doctor's like this, and every teacher's like this, right? You see it on the news and everybody tells you they're all like this. All gay people are like this. All black people are like this. All white people are like this. There's just this divisive shit that's out there that like everybody has to fit in these boxes of understanding. And what I've found, especially with my local community, is I have all those people here, every single one of them, and they don't necessarily fit in those boxes. As a matter of fact, they are far removed from those boxes, right? They are so much better and so much different than they're getting painted in the media and they're getting painted in society today. And I feel like Haley's a great example, and I brought a few more on the show in the past. But when it comes to teachers and, the big broad brush that our country paints our teachers with out there, I listen to a lot of podcasters and I listen to a lot of guys talk, a lot of the things of fixing the world or fixing the current situation that we're in is, fixing the learning system, right? Fixing our school administration. And I cringe a lot when they start attacking teachers and it's this and they're lazy and they only have the jobs because of this, because I think of people like Haley that like over the course of time, how long have we known each other? Like 8 years now?
8 years.
I've watched her passion for education and teaching kids grow into something that right now she's sitting on this podcast wanting to talk about a subject that's somewhat controversial, but so important. And, I've just watched it grow. Like this is somebody who's really, really passionate about kids, really, really passionate about her career as an educator. And I believe that there's a lot of women and guys out there just like her that aren't portrayed that well out there. And I want to get these stories out. Like there are people who still care about what they do. They care about your kids. They care about your kids' future. They care about my kids' futures. And I believe Haley's one of them. So that's why she's on the show today. One, she's a hard ass worker here at the gym. She's really good at her career. She's a new mom. So I'm going to kind of like turn it over to her and let her talk for a little bit about herself and how she came to Iron Legion, and we'll go from there. So Haley, take the show.
Sure. So I have been a member of Iron Legion for 8 years. I started in January. The year before I got married, I wanted to like tighten up for my wedding. And then I just kept coming back. So it started out as like let me just get in shape. And then it really turned into a lifestyle for me. So I have been a member for 8 years. I started my educational journey as a teacher at an alternative school. So if you're not familiar with alternative setting, it's for students who have been expelled or are alternatively placed for like felony charges, things like that. So I was thrusted into the crucible of education where you either like sink or swim. So I had lots of students who were seeing their probation officers daily. We had like metal detectors to come into class. It was wild. So I started there, but it's the best thing that ever happened to me as an educator because I really got to understand what happens if interventions are not taken, where kids end up. So that was an interesting experience. Best thing that ever happened to me. When teachers complain about behaviors in classrooms, I'm like, you need to go on a field trip. We need to take a walk through the walls of alternative school, and then you will find out what behaviors really are. So that gave me
actually the note I just made. So
yeah. That gives me a lot of background with classroom management. So I took that knowledge and I went to a high school and I taught at a high school inclusion classes. So that means that I had students with ESE labels. So exceptional student education is what ESE means. So these are students that may have like various learning disabilities. That could be dyslexia, it could be ADHD, it could be more severe learning disabilities, but they were included in general ed classrooms. So I was teaching all inclusion classrooms for high school students. During that time, I earned my master's degree, and it was an incredible experience. I loved working with high school kids. A lot of teachers kind of shy away from the inclusion setting because it's very challenging, but I personally loved it. And then, so after earning my master's degree, I knew that I kind of outgrew my classroom setting, and I really wanted to have a further reach into educators and what they were doing in their classrooms. So I applied for a job with Fiddlers, which is Florida Diagnostic Learning and Resource Systems. And I currently work as a technology specialist. So my job has many facets, but mostly I build professional development for teachers, and I deliver professional development. I do ongoing coaching for teachers. If teachers have a problem with a student, like maybe they're having some behavioral issues or need some assistive technology to assist the student, I go in and I help with the student, I evaluate, and I provide specific strategies for supporting the student. So that is what my job looks like now. But over time, I've gathered a lot of anecdotal experience that has urged me to want to go to further my education, to continue to a doctorate. And I have some theories that I would like to test in my doctoral program. But that is kind of like my whole background, but we'll go in more about what that looks like in the future.
The topic that we wanted to call today's podcast is Forging Curious Kids, Breaking the Cycle of Learned Helplessness.
Yes.
Which I have kids, and they are in the public school system. And I do, just on the surface, I see a lot of that learned helplessness being taught at the school because, I mean, even with my son here at Iron Legion, I'll... as hard as he works here, it's this constant like, I can't do this, or I can't do this, I can't do that. And why is that, right? Like, and I'm not sure if that's related to what we want to talk about here today, but I think that it is. Mm-hmm. So using, the title of this whole thing with the Forging Curious Kids, Breaking the Cycle of Learned Helplessness, which I love. The first question that we got is, curiosity, right? At what point do they start to lose their imagination, right? And more often than not, I can remember, it's shut up, sit down, do your work. You're here, kind of like a factory job, kind of like it's almost like we're molding kids just for that. So, like, what's the importance of curiosity? Why wouldn't we want to trample that curious bone? Yeah. Right.
So from 0 to 3, we know that these are like the most important developmental years, right? So kids are very, very curious. You'll notice that like your 1-year-old will go out into the front yard and they'll pick up a leaf and they're like fascinated by this leaf, the way that it crunches, the way that it blows in the wind, the way that you can fold it, but it's soft, but it's hard. Like they have all these questions that drive their development, right? So that continues until a certain age. And there was actually a study done at the University of Michigan that students ask fewer and fewer questions as they move through the education system. So it's very acceptable to feed a child's curiosity from the age 0 to 3, but that kind of starts to die as they get older because it doesn't seem as important. But curiosity is the stimulus for problem solving. So if we do not grow, think of like a faucet, like when you turn on like a rusty old faucet, at first you'll have like this like brown nasty stuff like spit out and then it clears up, right? So children are asking questions like, it may not seem like relevant questions, but those questions, they're building for problem solving skills. Right. So if our students are asking questions, there's the saying, there is no stupid question, because those questions drive that problem-solving skill. So if we turn on the rusty faucet, there's going to be like silly questions. Why this? Why this? Why does it do that? Why? Why is the sky blue? Right.
Right.
But we want to foster that. We want to foster that curiosity, because if we don't foster that curiosity, they will not have the confidence and they will not have the ability to ask the right questions in the future. So that faucet, the water will turn clear and they will have clear questions that drive their problem solving skills. So curiosity is essential, and it's not just essential from 0 to 3. It's essential through their high school, through their college experience as an adult. The first thing that we do when we solve problems as an adult is we ask questions. Why is my car not running? Why is it smoking? Could it be this function? Could it be, right? So like we have to ask questions in order to problem solve. What I have found, anecdotal experience as an educator, is that kids don't know how to ask the right questions. And the reason why they don't know how to ask the right questions is because teachers are always asking the questions. So my challenge is, and ultimately, like if and when I go back to study more, I really want to find out like where does curiosity really die, and why, and what are the factors? So, I mean, I would have kids that were like driving cars, getting jobs, these were high school kids, but they really didn't know how to, at its core, problem solve and ask the right questions. Sure. And that's a huge problem. And if our students remain curious, if they stay curious and they ask the right questions, that builds so many other skills for them as an adult. And I think that there is some kind of problem with our education system where it's very teacher driven. Like you said, it's very factory, like this is the way it is. And it's not designed to build curiosity.
So what's killing curiosity?
I think that it is a poor curriculum design. And I think that it is no fault of the teachers. I think that what happens is we have these teachers come in and we want to make it easy on teachers, right? We want to give them like a boxed curriculum, and we want to say, okay, these are the questions that you ask, and these are how you meet the standards, right? This curriculum. But I truly believe that if you take away the thumbprint that teachers have on their curriculum, if you take that away and you just give them like a box, then you're taking away the very essence of what a teacher should be. A teacher should be pushing students to their limits by their design. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So what design, if they're just given like a box curriculum design, then they don't have to work to figure out what questions the students are supposed to be asking, because they're just given box questions.
So that's very similar in coaching here at Iron Legion. Mm-hmm. So, I am in charge of coaching my coaches, teaching my coaches to be better coaches and leaders and different things also. So, and that's one thing that I take very seriously, is that while I also have a curriculum, we call it program, right? So we write programs for our CrossFit audience or even our weightlifting audience. There's programs that are created. And what I'll do when I release a program to my staff is, this is the bare minimum, right? This isn't a choreographed, or what's the word? Choreographed. This isn't a choreographed dance, right? Everybody in this class is going to need different attention, right? This is just the base plan. It's on you guys as coaches to become better coaches, to learn what Haley needs. She might need a little bit more today than that person over there needs, right? She has, we want them to ask questions. We want the members to understand why they're doing these types of things. And it's not just we throw a workout on the board and we expect everybody to do it the exact same way. It's just, that's the bare minimum. And then we have to, as coaches, expand out with every single member that we have in the class. And then some of them, every one of them is on their own individual journey. We're not all taking the same trip. Right. But it's very relatable into their day-to-day life. So they learn a lot here at the gym that they can take back out. Now, my son, same thing when it comes to his school. Right. It's really, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of parents out there that are going to giggle at this, but like when my son's grades are failing and I say, hey, if you like that hair you got, boy, I'm about to shave it off your head if you don't start showing me A's and B's. And all of a sudden he walks in the house one day with a report card, slaps it in my face, and it's all A's, and then literally dusts his shoulders off and walks away. I'm like, it's because it's easy. You're meeting the bare minimum, bro. I know what you're doing is the bare minimum at school, and it's super easy to get it done. Right. But have you taking the extra steps to learn to get on a path and where you're going. I think that's where great teachers step in and they see promise with kids and they start leading them down certain trips that are like, hey man, you're really good at history. Like one of my favorite teachers did, check this out. Go down this path, start learning more, put a little bit more focus on these types of things. Maybe I'm getting off course here, but like, I see what you're saying where like people are looking at the curriculum like this is the way and I have to stay on this checklist and it has to be exactly like this. Bullshit, man. That's the bare minimum. There's so much more that you have to do as a teacher, a leader, a coach, a mentor, any of those types of things. There's more to the job. So
yeah. And I think so a lot of teachers like This might be kind of like an unpopular opinion of mine, but when I was in the classroom, we did not take notes. I felt that it was a huge waste of time. It was a huge waste of time. And it's so easy to tell kids, sit down, be quiet. I don't want you to just write these notes down, copy these notes, but why? Why? It's pointless. Right. I want them to be able to take information and apply it, right?
Sure.
So like there are teachers, high school teachers, who are, and like I said, there's specific curriculum that the teachers are following. And like, I respect that and understand that. And I think that teachers are really doing the best that they can with the tools that they have been given. And this is not me like saying that teachers aren't doing their jobs. Not at all. What I'm saying is that like systematically, we need to give teachers a little bit more freedom and the right tools to really teach our kids the right way.
Sure.
So let me go back. So what I'm saying is like kids can earn grades by sitting down and writing notes, but is that really the outcome that we want? Like, is that really do we want them just like passively receiving information? No, I want
act on it.
Yes. I want my students to take information and apply it to solve problems. And that right there is where the magic happens. So I think that our curriculum designs really need to shift. School has always been the same. It really hasn't shifted much since like way back to the beginning of time, right? When we were like sitting in little wooden desks and there was a teacher with a dunce hat. So like their school has not changed. It's a factory design, but
the world's changed quite a bit.
Our world is changing fast. And we have like this new introduction of technology, right? So like within the past 10, 20 years, kids are introduced to technology. So the free space that they had outside of school to build those skills of problem solving and curiosity, it's not so much anymore because we have introduced technology to them. So what this does, I believe, is we give our kids technology and it takes away their ability to like really regulate. And I think that you have this technology, which is kind of dysregulating our kids. There's a time and there's a space for technology, I believe. But I also believe that it is creating this dysregulation. And now teachers are really feeling that. Kids are innately like very emotional beings, right? So when we give them this technology, they detach a lot from their emotions. And just like any other muscle, that muscle has to be built, right? So we have them in school, this like very factory design where they have like whiplash from going one subject to the next subject to the next subject. And then they come out of school, and not all kids, I'm not saying all parents do this, but they're introduced to technology. And then they have really no free space to explore, to be themselves, to regulate their emotions, right? Because they're told all day, focus, do this, right? And then they come out of that, and then they have technology introduced where they're still not practicing how to regulate themselves. And so when they go into school, teachers are really feeling this dysregulation. And so it's not there. Yes, there's the curriculum design that needs to change, but also, what are we doing to support our students outside of school? Because that is going to really influence how well they do in school moving forward.
And I feel I can see that, right? So even, again, I'm going to use my son a lot just because he's 12, 13. So like he's been in it for a minute, right? So my little girls are just getting into school. So, one of them's nonverbal and the other one's just super social butterfly. So like they're not great examples. They're like 5, right? So 5 and 7. But Logan's 12, getting ready to be 13, and he is infatuated with his phone, right? So like that to me, when you say technology, obviously that can be computers, phone, any of those types of things. But with him, it's not just him, it's all of them. Anybody that's around his age, they're just he's grown up with this. This is something that I didn't grow up with. A lot of us, I'm 47 years old. Like, I was talking the other day when, the iPhone first came out, when I know the guy, his name was Brian Shomach, was a good friend of mine. I remember when he got his first iPhone, and it was like 2005, 2006, and everybody was infatuated with this dude because he had an iPhone and he could take pictures with it. And it was super cool, right? And then everybody, I remember being at, we were at some show, and everybody staring at this thing, and I was in the 2 rows back watching, and I was like, that was the introduction of that technology to me. And then now everybody's got it in their face, right? So like, but I spent however many years, I was born in 75, all the way up to, 2005 or 6 before I even saw anything like that, right? So I grew up without it. So for us as people that are from those generations, right, it's hard to, there's 2 types of people. I see them. They're ones that have gotten infatuated with that technology because it's new, or they completely ignore it and they hate it, right? And I'm like the guy on the fence. Like, I don't know where I want to be with it. But when I watch my son and other kids like him, just constantly, it's in their face. And then I realize that he can't even sit still to watch a movie, right? An hour and 10-minute movie, an hour and 30-minute movie, he cannot do it. Everything that he does has to fit. I've learned it has to fit in a TikTok reel or an Instagram reel. Like, that's the attention span these kids are getting now from these phones. And it's like, they can't process anything longer than that. So I can imagine the struggle a teacher has, right? When I'm trying to engage you for an hour on math, right? And you can't think past 15 seconds. Your brain is constantly needing some type of dopamine rush from your phone or whatever it is that this tech is feeding you. That is like, it's awful. So yes, I'm sure teachers are feeling that. 100%, because as parents, we feel it, right? And it's also created almost an antisocial network, but very social thing with them, where it's a weird social that my son will sit in his room for 4 or 5 hours at night talking to his friends on the phone, and they're playing games and they're doing everything back and forth, but it's virtual and there's no one in the room with them.
Yes.
And it's just so crazy. And it's just like this flip-flop back and forth. And like, I can't imagine how these kids act when it's like, now put your phone in your bag, right? And pay attention to me while I talk, because I can't hold a conversation with my kid because of that thing. And it's going to only get tougher. So I can imagine when we're talking about curriculum changes and different things like that, how hard that's going to be, right? And it's hard, I would think, to lay over a checklist and say, here's the things you need to touch on, when like, probably, I'm just going to guess, I'm not a teacher, but 40 to 50% of the class, you're just trying to get them to sit down for a second and listen to you. You haven't even started on the subject yet, right? So, the effects of, what can parents do about that type of stuff? What do you think?
So,
like trying to keep curiosity open, which, being curious about tech's not going anywhere.
No.
And that's one of the things as a parent we struggle with too. It's like, well, I'll just eliminate the phone.
Yeah, no.
You can't.
No.
Because everything we do now, you can go to McDonald's and you don't have to talk to anybody. You can literally just go on the little menu and not talk to anybody. You turn around and they hand you your food and you walk out. Like, that's going to be the new world, right? And we can't really necessarily stifle that.
Nope.
But we have to find a way to live with it. And you guys are the front lines as teachers, but you're working in an old curriculum.
Yes.
That world doesn't exist anymore.
Correct.
It's a new world. So
Correct.
how do we work that?
So, okay, from the teacher's perspective, I'll start there, and then I'll move into the parents. Our kids are digital natives. They're like,
wow, that's a cool term. That's really
I didn't
good.
make that up. That's a
okay.
that's
I've never heard it. That's really cool.
Okay. So
I'm not.
Exactly, you are not a digital native.
No.
You aren't. So our kids are
I'm
digital.
I'm from the water faucet native.
Yes. Our kids are digital natives, and we as educators have to change our landscape. We really have to change our landscape. Our students or our kids, they are digital natives.
Right.
You are not a digital native. So their brain is wired differently, but our education system is still treating them like they're not digital natives, right? So the
like they're going to try to like wrench them back into that, which I don't believe is possible.
No, it's not possible. You're right. Our world has changed, period. So how we adapt as educators is we really need to change the landscape. Our students should not be sitting down and writing useless notes. Our students should be taught how to ask questions. In my experience, a lot of my kids they would sit down and read, and they could read great, but they didn't comprehend any of it. And so I would literally have to stop and say, ask me a question. Ask me a question. Whatever that question is. But they have to be able to build this muscle of curiosity, which I said earlier. But the idea of changing our education system, parents have to be aware, and it's in legislation, it's in talking to administrators, it's in talking to the board. Like these are big steps that have to be taken. And so what can parents do with digital natives? How can we assist our children in managing these devices? I think that it's really important as parents, and we know like the regulars, like, okay, you can have it during this time or whatever. But I think that we have to give more purpose to the technology other than just like, oh, it's a free for all. You know what I mean? Like we have to have purpose. Like kids are going to need technology. They're going to need technology as a resource for information, as any job that they're going to have right now is going to involve technology. So how can we teach them to use technology with a purpose?
Right.
And teachers have to do the same thing. Technology should have a purpose. It shouldn't be just like, districts have adopted all of this curriculum and all of these platforms for students to go in and answer questions, and it collects data for them and stuff like that. But truly, like, what is the purpose for the student? And parents have to look at the same thing. What is the purpose of the technology? Is the purpose of the technology to like keep them busy, or is there some kind of meaningful way of using the technology? So can we give our kids a target or an objective to reach through technology, not just like a free for all of scrolling through TikTok? I used to use technology heavily in my classroom, but it always had a purpose. It always had a purpose for our kids. It wasn't just like mindless. And I think technology has become very mindless, but we need to make it mindful. So, there are apps out there that teachers and parents can use to really educate and show their kids like this is the use of technology outside of just like mindless dysregulation or disconnection
or pure entertainment. And that's the thing where most of them just look at it like pure entertainment.
It is pure entertainment for them. But but us as adults have to manage that for them. You know what I mean? Like
I think adults have problems with that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. But we for most of us are pretty like maybe it's just the community that we surround ourselves with, but I feel like this community where we are mindful people, I think so. The people who come here, they are pretty mindful. So like, we take time to do the things that make us better. But I don't know if the next generation will understand how to do that because they have been introduced at such a young age. Yes, they have been, they've been given this tool of technology at such a young age that they haven't had the time to use it in a mature way.
Right.
But we as parents have to be able to manage that, if that makes any sense.
Yes. And as parents, managing that before the kids get to the classroom would help.
Yes.
Right off the rip, just right off the rip. That doesn't even require a curriculum change. That's just like, let's get your kids' attention back on what has to be done today, right? Versus just always on the phone, every 15 seconds, flipping through things. But again, like the curriculum changes as well, like adding things in that are more technology based. I can go back, in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when they were introducing computers in schools. It was a class that you took and no one liked it. Everyone hated it, right? And it was, well, at least I did. I thought it was stupid. Most of my friends all thought it was stupid. Like that class was one you just went in there to just screw around in. But now, had we taken that a little bit more seriously, it would be a lot different today because, you know, it's odd to hear you say that schools haven't changed too much in that, you know, since all the way back, right? And I'm sure you're probably right. There probably still is just a boring computer class that is super boring and dumb. I don't know. Maybe there isn't, maybe there is. But I feel like most classes should have that stuff in it. Like it's just almost immersing yourself in it. So you're not ignoring it. And then it's almost like the kids have a guide, right? They have a guide and you're the guide. The teachers, the passionate teachers wanting these kids to learn more, you got to capture them where they're at. And if we're going to insist on technology being a thing, capturing them where they're at and what they're interested in, maybe that environment has to change as well, right? We have to, we have to get that tech into that curriculum.
Yes. Capturing them where they're at. I really like how you said that, because if it's not relevant, they won't care. They won't care. And so like
they're moving too fast. They're shifting too quick.
And here's the thing. Okay. Focus to me, focus is not as important as curiosity.
Okay. I got
so like sitting kids down and saying, we need you to focus on this. Like that it's forced. It's false. See what I'm saying? So like if we want to embed technology, we have to embed it in a interesting, captivating, and relevant way.
Absolutely.
If it is not relevant to them, and here's the thing, factory design, like I said, we have this boxed curriculum. It's not going to be interesting for every kid. Period. No. It's not going to be interesting.
It wasn't for me.
No. So, and then this is where like my background is coming in with universal design for learning. We have to universally design our classrooms. And so honestly, that is the solution, really, is universally designing our classrooms. Now, there's tons of research on this, and I did not make any of this up. But if we universally design our classrooms and we universally design education. So let me give you an example of what that means.
Yeah, please do.
Yes, because I'm just saying words.
Right.
Okay. You have stairs that you can walk up, right? Can everyone in society walk up those stairs?
No.
No. Okay. It's the same with a classroom. The curriculum is the stairs. If I have a people mover, I call it a people mover, the moving sidewalk at Universal, you know what I'm talking about? Where you like get on it and you move, right? That's universally designed. Everyone can get on that people mover. I call it a people mover. I think it's called a sidewalk, a moving sidewalk. I'll go with the right term. Yeah. So the moving sidewalk, everyone can get on it. Everyone in society. You could put a newborn baby on it and they'll get from A to B, right?
Sure.
Because it is universally designed. We have to design our curriculum the same way. And technology is involved with that. So, for example, when we did novel studies in my classroom, I could give every kid a book and say, okay, you need to read this book. I have kids that really struggle with reading. I have kids that have dyslexia. I have kids that have probably never picked up a book in their life and read it, right? So how can I create a universal design? I always purchase the audio version and I would play it on the loudspeaker for the whole classroom to read, to listen as they're reading, right? Which builds reading fluency, comprehension, everything. A little boy, he's a 9th grader. He was like, football. It was like, reading's not important. I don't need to go to school. I just want to play football. I caught him in the corner reading that book independently on his own. I would never, ever see this kid pick up a book ever. But because he had access to the audio version, he was invested. It became relevant to him. Also, the book was relevant to the kids. It was a very interesting book. But my point is,
if he's struggling to read it, he's not going to get it.
If he's struggling to read it in the first place, and I don't give him the access that he needs, he will not be successful. That falls on me as the educator.
Right.
So what I'm saying is I was able to universally design that situation so every single kid had access to that book, even though it was the audio version, but they also had access to read it. And that encouraged them. It made it relevant to him. He was able to have access to it and he was able to be invested in it.
And that's what we're looking for.
And that is exactly what we want. So also, he was very curious as to what the next plot was, right? The next part of the plot. Like it was just a beautiful teacher moment. So we have to be able to inspire those moments through designing our curriculum to be universal for all students. It cannot be this way or that way. And so, but we do that with technology, like back when you were in school, there was no access to technology where you could play an audiobook for your kids. There wasn't, right?
We were stoked when the little TV tower was in there once in a while for a movie, but other than that.
There you go. So my point is like, we can use technology in a meaningful way in our classrooms, and we can use it to provide access to our students. And so when I talk about really getting our kids to think independently, we have to give them the tools to think independently.
Correct.
We can't just say like, sit down, this is the way it's going to be, and you don't ask questions about it. It's not going to work. These digital natives, they're too smart. They're too smart for that.
They are.
Yes.
And they have the world at their fingertips if they're smart enough to do it. So it's interesting. So you're not talking about changing subjects necessarily. You're talking about changing how it's taught.
Yes.
Right? Well, I mean, this subject can be conversation for another podcast.
Yeah.
But like right now, what we're really digging into is like, how are we teaching these kids?
Yes.
Right. And I feel like the how right now is what you're talking about. It's not completely broken, but it can be fixed, and it needs to be overhauled at least, and looked at again with a more modern perspective of where are we going as a society. Right.
Yes.
And I just, what kind of changes to society do we need to do you think that we could do to fix something like that?
So I think that we really need to look at what we want the outcomes of education to be, because I think that's really lost right now. I think that what is the purpose of school? Do we send our kids to school just so parents can go to work? Do we send our kids to school because we want them to socialize? A little bit, yes. But do we send our kids to school because we want them to be functioning members of society that can think independently and that build a meaningful life? Like, yes, that's what we want. And parents trust the education system to make that happen. But is our education system rooted in those values? Because we have to let those values drive the outcomes. And I don't feel like we have those values at its core right now. So at its core, we have this very box curriculum that we're handing teachers. And our kids are really not living up to their full potential because of it.
Right.
And I believe that if we look at what we want our outcomes to be, we have to change our values, period. So what do we value most? We want to value critical thinking. We want to value self-sufficiency. And we want them to be independent thinkers. And we want them to be able to use technology effectively. So we've got to place those core values we have to embed them into our curriculum. We
had a topic in the beginning that I see with my kid, the whole learned helplessness thing. And I feel like as a parent, I spend a lot of time combating it by putting him on jujitsu mats and teaching him how to lift weights and how it's okay to be strong. And it's okay to want to beat somebody else in a game. It's all right to be competitive, which I feel like a lot of these things are looked down upon in a school setting. They don't want you to be competitive. Everybody has to be exactly the same. And this whole learned helplessness thing, to me, I feel like is something that when you throw a term on it, like learned helplessness, and then I see it when I have kids in our classes that just immediately go to whining and I can't do this, or I have to take a break. It's just one of the funniest things when you see an 8-year-old kid, not my son, but like any kid, let's just say an 8-year-old kid, for example, and he's in a training modality, whether it's jujitsu, weightlifting, CrossFit, whatever it is, and it's fun. And they just immediately just stop in the middle of it and go, I just need to take a break. And you need to what? I need to take a break. I have to take a break. And I'm like, where the hell did you learn that? And it's like, we take breaks. I just need to take a break. And they look at you like you're not allowed to argue with me about that. Kind of like a parent when they're like, I can't come into work today because my kid's sick. It's like, you're not allowed to argue that point, right? So like with these kids, they just look right at you and I need to take a break. And they literally walk off the floor and go get a glass of water. It's like, get your little ass back over here and get back into class. We're not doing that. You haven't even worked hard enough to sweat. Like I feel like that's what you mean by learned helplessness. So kind of explain learned helplessness a little bit more to me so that like we can put it in context better than my caveman brain.
Yeah, no, you're fine. So learned helplessness is the inability to, one, ask for help, and two, dig your way out of a problem. So, for example, we have kids who maybe what I've seen kids sit in class and not one time ask for help, and they're floundering and they're not getting any work done and they're not doing anything because they simply just aren't asking for help. So what happens if they do not advocate for themselves, if they do not have the confidence to advocate for themselves, because confidence is really, really big.
It's everything.
Really big. It's everything. So but how do these kids build confidence? They build confidence through knowing that they're capable of solving problems. And so and where does that come from? Curiosity, right? Inquisitiveness. Yep. So,
and good mentors, teachers, and leaders.
Yes, who show them how to use curiosity as a weapon, as a powerful tool for problem solving.
Right.
So when I think of learned helplessness, I think of kids who are lacking the confidence to solve problems because they don't know how to ask the right questions. They don't know how to dig themselves out of a problem. So this idea of teaching kids the power of curiosity and the weapon that it can be to solve problems, that is how you break this cycle of learned helplessness. We have to give our kids the tools to be successful using the natural curiosity that they have from a little tiny wee baby. So, but that doesn't just come with like, ask a question, right? You can't just tell them ask a question. You have to model for them and you have to give them the tools to ask the right questions. So, and I think that if kids graduate from high school and they have adopted this learned helplessness where they don't know how to ask the right questions, then we're not setting them up for success.
Right.
And so ultimately, I believe that curiosity is a natural God-given talent, or not talent. Curiosity is a natural God-given ability. And we as parents and teachers have to foster this and let it grow and water it and watch it bloom into confidence and self-advocacy and the ability to problem solve independently. We want independent thinkers.
We do.
Yes.
Society doesn't, but we do.
Yes.
I don't believe that society does. Like if you look back, I remember the first time you and I were talking about having this podcast, and I made the joke, like, you would have made a great punk back in the 80s, right? So like everything was, and still is, question authority, critical thinking, ask why, unpopular opinions to authority, right? Very unpopular opinions to governments and different things like that. It's no, don't question me. I'm telling you this is how it is and this is how it has to be done. But the whole punk movement has always been, and the whole just push against that whole modern society bullshit has always been ask questions.
Yes.
Don't just immediately accept what you're being told. And I, and we just went through all this bullshit with COVID. And it's like, don't ask questions. You just do what you're told. You have to do these steps the way that we're telling you to, or you're going to die. Right.
Yes.
So like, but it was just this resurgence of people going, no, man, I can think for myself and it's okay. I want to be an independent thinker. And we need to, I agree with you. And it's cool to see people like you and administrators like that taking things that were part of an identity culture for me growing up as who I was, never part of the mainstream, always asking questions and always on the outside, because I didn't necessarily believe that the school system was the best idea. I didn't necessarily believe that what everybody tells me it has to be just like this. Bullshit, man. There's so much of the world out there that I want to question everything. Even to this day, when you tell me it's like this, I'm like, I'm not so sure. And it's on me as that individual. And that's just kind of the way that I've been brought up is do question everything.
Yes.
Always be curious because those are the things that'll help you be a success later in life. And I think that you're on to something with that. How do you add it into a school curriculum? I think is very interesting. And I'm curious to see where that's all going to go in the future. I think I think that we have a big culture issue as well in the US where, why are we educating our kids? Great question. And if we take our school system today, we're educating our kids to work in factories where, back when we created the system, we were the best manufacturer in the world, right? And our kids were pumped out every single day and they were ready for World War I, World War II, and then jumping into these factories and going to these big steel plants. And we had the best, most productive kind of generation that we'd ever had in our life, right? But then we never changed our school system. Everything changed in the country, but the school system changed or didn't change, stayed the same, right? So at the end of the day, we're still creating those workers, but we're not shipping them over to China to do our work. They're coming out ready to manufacture, ready to work in these by the bell type environments that don't work for anybody.
They come out ready to be told what to do.
Ready to be told what to do, and it doesn't work, and it's
Correct.
not gonna work. So I agree that kind of curriculum needs to change. Things have to get a little bit more into modern society. And at the end of the day, the other problem with that is we've created an environment. So if we think of that environment that we were creating these kids for, right, in the manufacturing era of the United States of America, if you really look back, I believe we had a one provider, single provider households where, be it the majority of them where the husband was out doing the work, the mother was at home raising and helping raise the kids. And in some scenarios it was the other way around, but the majority of it was like that, right? So we had incomes and a culture base back then that created a more family unit where the parents could be more involved, albeit now the whoever the breadwinner was probably was spending more time in the world getting the bread to pay the bills, right? To get the bread for the house. But there was always somebody at home that was taking the extra effort to teach these kids to be the best versions of themselves. They could pick up the curiosity side of it. They could do all these things that you're talking about that are very, very important. And I think that's where we're lacking now is like over time. And as we've had these culture shifts, we don't have a country or a culture anymore where it's possible for the majority of us to have one single breadwinner in the house. Both of us have to work.
Yes.
Husband and wife, guy, girl, guy, SEO, whatever you want to call your SO, right? You both got to work in order to make it work in the US now because it is so expensive to have a house, to have bills, to have all the different things that you've got to cover, right? So that takes both parents and puts them out of the house, right? And now you have a school system that still is a little bit broken, like you're saying, right? And parents don't have time to spend with their kids anymore.
Yeah.
And why am I sending, that was a great question, was why am I sending my kids to school? I believe that I honestly, and I feel like most of them send their kids to school because they got nowhere else to put them. They got to work.
Yep.
I got to go to work, man. And then when they go to work, right, and they come home, they're exhausted. They've been working all day. One or two of them probably not in the house, right? Most of them are broken home type shit too. So it's like, it's even harder. And then you have these kids that like, they can't pay attention to anything. So they're always handed these damn phones all the time. And it's an environment that's just, if you dig deeper and deeper and deeper, it goes down to parents don't even have time to spend with their kids anymore. And if that's the case, it's very important for parents to get involved in the school system because the school system's not ready for this.
No.
It's not ready to be a parent, and it shouldn't be. It's the fucking state. It should never be the parent of your kid.
Yes.
Ever. And like I said before, it's the bare minimum as the curriculum, right? And it's on teachers and parents to take it the next steps and create the next generation of kids. But like I said, it's a very hard scenario now when both parents have to go. Like I look at my life, my wife and I are both entrepreneurs. We own our own businesses. We have 3 kids and we struggle. And we have a really cool job where they're here at the gym all day and we have people from the outside like, oh, it's really cool that your kids get to hang out in the gyms. They don't like being here.
Yeah.
They want to go be kids, but they're stuck with their parents. And then what do they end up doing? They're on their phone all the time. Right. And we do the best we can as parents to try to fill in the gaps and keep them creative and do all those types of things. But the old system of, one person works and the other person at home, I used to joke and make fun of the homeschool kids back in the day, right? So like they were always the weirdos. But if you look at it now, I believe that was the way, right? So like you were allowed to, as parents, bring your kids up the way that you wanted to bring them up. And I don't think that you can't do that in a school.
Yeah.
I believe you can too.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some stuff that can be borrowed both ways to go like, well, why is and I feel like the homeschool network these days is probably much more robust than it ever was due to the last 3 or 4 years. Maybe looking at how that is working and trying to apply some of that into your normal administrative day-to-day, like normal schools, right? Because I feel like there is a little bit more added attention to kids and why they're at school.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And taking the time for curiosity, like when we're at a park with our kids doing a homeschooling type thing or something like that. I don't homeschool my kids, but I hear about it all the time. And it's, we take it, the moment to talk about that leaf that you were talking about, and it bends and it breaks and it crumbles. Why does it do that? Why does it blow away in the wind? Well, if I don't have to rush you into another class and it's just you and me and maybe a couple of other kids in a homeschool environment, you can get my undivided attention and I can be just as magical and passionate about that thing as you, as a kid.
Yes.
And you can kind of relate to them on that level versus trying to process 50 uninterested kids in an busted ass curriculum, right? So I think there's a lot of things that can be fixed. Where do you start? I don't know. I think as a country, it's really tough, but I think it really, at the end of the day, you can't fix everything as a parent, right? And you're taking on a battle of trying to fix the curriculums in the school, but in the meantime, parents can't wait.
Yeah.
You can't wait for the curriculum to get fixed, and you can't wait for the school to do everything for you.
No.
So as a parent, take heed. Your kids are getting older by the second, right? It's on you at the end of the day. You decided to have those kids. You brought them into the world. It is your responsibility, whether you like it or not, to introduce them to new technologies, keep them curious, keep them engaged, keep things very important, and try to keep them on the right path the best way that you can. And don't just rely on the schools. Yes. Right? Because the schools may not be the best system for your kids. They weren't for me. I hated school. I don't test well. I do have a bachelor's degree. I did do the whole system thing, but like I never really liked it. It was something that was all I did was learn how to take the test. I don't know that I actually use a lot of the things I learned at school. Most of the things is I just really like to run myself into the walls all the time and just learn new shit all the time. And I love to teach myself new stuff. So do that with your kids. Keep them curious. Keep them engaged as parents. There are people like you that are fighting the battle to get schools changed so that our parents can feel comfortable putting kids there. And maybe they can focus a little bit more on their jobs because they know there's educators like you out there that are going to be taking care of them. But right now, I don't believe that that's the majority of them out there.
And so schools serve the people. Right. So like the people have to use their voices.
Voice up.
People
but
have
a lot of people don't have time, and that was the thing too. And it's tough, but it's important.
It is important.
So important.
And you have to, education is the foundation of our society.
Right.
So if we want to.
Always has been.
Yes, always has been. So if we want to raise up these kids to be problem solvers, to voice their opinions, we have to model that as parents too. And don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that there's the board right now. The Board of Education is on the docket is to do half days on Wednesdays to give teachers more professional development. To and like parents have a say in this. And there is opportunity for parents to reach out to the board to make their recommendations. There's opportunities for parents to choose curriculum, and not a lot of parents know that.
I didn't know that.
No. So like whenever the district adopts new textbooks, they ask for input from parents. They actually have like textbook walks where parents like go in and read the textbooks, and like it's. How
do you find out about that as a parent? Like I'm not, maybe I just because I have a wife that pays attention to stuff like that, but how would I, let's just use me for an example. I haven't heard of any of those things.
Yes.
And I always hear people like, go to your school board meetings, go to these so you can voice your opinion.
Yeah, but school board meetings are like 6 hours long.
Yeah, but how do you even find out where they are or?
Okay, so, one, there are a lot of like skyward all calls. So they'll do like a message that they'll push out to all parents. The primary parent is going to get that call. So, or the primary number. If you visit the website, the Marion County Public School website, you can see when all the board meetings are. You can, there's like fast facts that you can see like, okay, these are the bulleted things that they covered in the board meeting. This is what they're covering.
For you, this might seem very elementary, but for a lot of us, this is important shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, and I think that, maybe the school board needs to do a better job of getting parents access. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know what you don't know. So as a parent, you guys should have more access to this information. You should know more. But there's always, there's resources out there, but sometimes you have to dig a little bit. So going to the website, going to Marion County Public Schools, not just hanging up whenever you get an all call from Skyward. I do it. And talking to your teachers, like talk to the kids' teachers. Like I would have parent teachers nights, and I would have 2 parents show up. Like literally.
But I kind of explained why that is.
I know, because
and it's not, I don't feel like parents ignore their, I think they all want to do those things. I honestly do. And I feel like the world that we're in right now is it's difficult. It's not impossible, but it's difficult for you to make those meetings. It's difficult for you to, you want to assume that, I'm sending my kid to school. They got it covered.
Yeah.
They don't, man. And it's like, so I get it, and even as I think teachers also need to take that breath, like, oh my God, man, I've only got like 3 parents in here. No parent cares. And it's not that the parents don't care. No, I know. Yeah. We're talking in generalities.
Yeah,
but it's, you're going to have a lot of parents. I get upset when I have low attendance in classes sometimes, and it's literally just related to holidays and different things like that. Yeah. And I'm just like, nobody cares about fitness, right? So I could get it. So I could see as a teacher, you create a parent teacher night, and you're like, I set aside a specific time. I sent out emails, texts. I put it on the website. I did all these things, and 3 parents showed up, and it's so disheartening because I'm putting my heart and soul into this, but only 3 parents came. Yeah. And I don't think it's that the other 12 parents couldn't come. It's just that they couldn't make it. Yeah. They literally are just overwhelmed with the shit that they've got to do every single day, that it's tough. And again, that's another curriculum fix where it's like, as much as I hate virtual stuff, but like that might be something that allows for parents to have that type of say in the future. That I don't know how that gets fixed, but constantly encouraging parents that, even though you couldn't make this particular time, there's going to be a follow-up, and then there's going to be a follow-up, and then there's going to be this, and there's going to be this. And like, I don't know what the answer is there, but like, as teachers, maybe I'm reaching out to teachers and saying, take heart in that parents do care. They actually do care. It's just that just because they didn't show up to something like that doesn't mean they don't care. And
so not to like put in a plug of another podcast, but Ben Bergeron has a podcast called Chasing Excellence. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. Yeah. But he was saying in this podcast, if there's one thing that I would do to fix society. So like somebody asked him, like, what was one thing you would do to fix society? He said, I would actually make school shorter, fewer hours in school. And then our work lives would have to change. So he's saying like, yes, people work too much. People work too much. God. And we all feel it. I mean, my husband literally works like 50, sometimes 60 hours a week. It's disgusting. But it is the way of life that we built our life around that. So, but what I'm saying is like, if companies had to shift their workday, they would have to, because kids would be out of school earlier. So like if we were talking about like one thing to do to fix society, we would change our education system, and they would go to school from like maybe 8 to 1 or 8 to 12. And then parents would be far more involved because they would have to be, and the workplace would have to change to accommodate that. So these are not my words, but this is coming. It is an interesting thought.
I love it. I like it from 10,000 feet, but the actual practicality of it, I'm like, man.
Yeah, because then there are
entrepreneurs every day at that time. Like, holy shit.
There's entrepreneurs like you who are like, well, I'm in charge of my own business, so like I don't have it's not like I don't
have that luxury.
Exactly. So, but it was just an interesting.
You do have that luxury. So I mean, it's
an interesting thought because like if the school system changed, the rest of society would have to change. We would all have to adapt with it. If they said this is how it's going to be, parents would have to figure it out, right? And like there are issues with like, not everyone has the luxury of like making enough and picking their kids up from school. And anyway, I'm trailing off. I shouldn't have.
No, those are the point that you made about remembering why or having a reason to send your kids to school.
Yes.
Is so important. 1, in building the curriculum, and 2, parents understanding that too.
Yes.
Like, I think parents need to understand that we're sending our kids to school to make them the best possible version of themselves.
Yes.
And that's all it should be
yes.
at the end of the day. And it's not to fit somebody else's little box.
Yes.
Right.
And educators, I truly believe educators go into education because they genuinely want what is best for kids. But over time, the system kind of like beats you down a little bit, you know, like you're given this box curriculum and you're told you have to reach these standards and you're told they have to test this and they have to, you know, and you're graded on what their scores are. And like, it's very stressful for an educator. And so it's very easy to lose sight of like, what do we want our outcomes to be? Do I value curiosity? If so, then I need to reflect that in my classroom.
Sure.
And so ultimately that's where it should be. Our values should be in curiosity and fighting learned helplessness at its core.
I completely agree. I think we'll wrap it up there. And that was another episode of Forging Better Humans, the Forging Curious Kids, Breaking the Cycle of Learned Helplessness. Really cool podcast. We talked a lot, so
yes.
I'm interested to see how this was all going to come together. So it's really cool. So. Out.